Cowardice asks, the question, is it safe? Expediency asks, the question, is it politic? Vanity asks, the question, is it popular? But conscience asks, the question, is it right? And there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but he must do it because conscience tells him it is right.
Every time our country stands in the path of danger, an instinct seems to summon her finest first, those who truly understand her. When freedom shivers in the cold shadow of true peril, it's always the patriots who first hear the call. When loss of liberty is looming, as it is now, the siren sounds first in the hearts of freedom's vanguard.
Fighting for humanity and against globalism, one mind at a time. It's the Freedom Link with Joe Joseph.
Well, welcome everybody. It's the Freedom Link here on KGRADB.com and over on Rumble and YouTube and Twitter and Facebook and, well, not Twitter, X.
Why don't they just call it X Twitter?
I don't know. It's a good idea. I'm all for it.
Because it is X Twitter, right? So
well, yeah, it is.
X Twitter.
Yeah.
X Twitter.
We have a very exciting night ahead, everybody, because we've got some really good, interesting stuff to cover. But on top of that, my friends, we got one of our OGs back. That's right. My old, very old friend, Johnny King in the hizzy. And yes, I know he works third shift, so he doesn't get any sun, hence the reason why he has a mole-ish-like appearance. But I will tell you this right now, that mind is still sharp as a tack. Sharp as a tack. Johnny, welcome, my friend. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing good.
Yeah.
Hopefully your audience is preparing for World War III, because
World War III
Potato Head is going to get us all radiated.
No.
You don't say.
Why? Why would you now, John? Let me ask you something. Why would you go and make a claim like that?
That's not on the mainstream, but that's on the independent media. It's all over the place. Ukraine is losing the war. The mainstream is saying that Ukraine is winning the war. A little pissant country against a world power. Come on now.
Okay.
My last show that I listened to is 50,000 Russians dead in the Ukraine-Russian war versus 400,000 Ukrainians dead. Excuse me.
So what you're saying is that Russia's plowing them is basically what you're saying.
Oh, they're getting bent over, dude. They're yanking 60-year-old men off the street and throwing them into the meat grinder.
Okay, so we'll talk about that tonight, too. That's a very, very, very interesting topic that we'll have to get into. I got to mute you for a second, Johnny. Now, if you notice, Johnny's audio may be a little much to be desired, but it's all about the content, folks. Just remember that. It's all about the content. And having Johnny King in the house is always a treat. I want to start off tonight with something that's, let's just say it's been vilified for a very long time. Go back to the black and white film days. And of course you had Reefer Madness, and how marijuana really started to get a bad rap, and you can trace it back to the likes of the DuPont family who said, by cracky, we really want to sell this synthetic fiber nylon. And boy, oh boy, it would really be nice to be able to get that market share. But gosh darn it, that freaking hemp is just abundant and it's too cheap. So why don't we just go about lobbying the government and creating a big propaganda fear campaign, and well, let's just take it away. Let's just take it away, and then we're going to go ahead and not only are we going to take away a very versatile plant that has a whole myriad of different uses, but we're going to go and put our synthetic shit out there because you know what? Better living through chemicals. And so for the last 100 years or so, it's kind of the way it's been, you know, but Scotty just educated me on a loophole, if you will. Now, we have, of course, Scotty, 26 states now have either legalized it for medicinal use or recreational, if I remember right. So over half the country already has it in some way, shape, or form.
And then you have these sort of like dead zone holdouts, right? Like where I live, Kansas, which is surrounded by states where it's legal. I believe it's either
North Carolina.
Ohio,
I want to say North Carolina is another one.
Ohio or Indiana, one of them states. They're in the same position where every state around them is legal, but they're not. You know, and literally the walls are starting to close in on these states that are still like just hell-bent on just holding out as long as they can. And you know, unfortunately Kansas is one of these states, and I mean, of course, because Kansas is the same state that started prohibition, you know, alcohol prohibition back in the day. So it's par for the course for this state to do that. But you know, it's interesting because the more they try to prohibit things, the more people will find loopholes and ways around it, right? And so what's interesting is that in 2018, a bill was passed, right? The 2018 Farm Bill, and it allowed for farms to grow.
So wait a minute. So you're saying that this was part of a major piece of legislation. So
yes,
for anybody that doesn't know, typically every year there is farm subsidies that the federal government puts out there as a part of a way to keep agriculture propped up, if you will. And there's a whole heap of reasons why they do it. You can agree with them, you don't agree with them, it doesn't really matter. Every year Congress gets through a funding bill or a subsidy bill for farms. And so this piece of legislation had what in it?
Well, from what I understand, now I mean I don't have the bill pulled up in front of me or whatever, but from what I understand, the 2018 Farm Bill allowed all farms across all states, right? You know, this was a national where they could grow hemp, right? As long as the THC level was below 3%, you could cultivate hemp, right? So where this interesting little loophole comes into play is when we're discussing this 3% threshold of THC within the hemp, because you know, THC.
By the way, 3%, is that? Did I hear that right?
Yes, 3%.
Sounds kind of radical to me. This has already got the signs of radicalism.
Oh, little 3%er talk going on here.
Yeah, see now, oh boy.
Oh boy.
Watch yourself there. Watch yourself there, mister.
Right.
You're triggering me.
But what's interesting about it is okay, so we know that there's many different compounds in marijuana, right? Or cannabis, I should say. You know, we'll not use the dirty term that they like to you know, whatever, cannabis. So you have, you know, right, CBD.
Yeah.
Which, you know, perfectly fine. You know, it's
has its uses.
For inflammation. Has its uses. You know, and you have many different cannabinoids and compounds within them. Within the cannabis, right? So before THC is actually
Psychoactive?
psychoactive or created in the plant, its precursor form is THCA, and the A stands for acid. It's the acidic form of THC.
Okay.
And this is the form that it's in when the plant is like freshly harvested. It hasn't had time to,
Right. So it hasn't
decarbonize or
dried
whatever.
and decarbonized.
It hasn't
Right.
dried and decarbonized.
So they're
And that's where
taking
you,
it.
that's
They're taking
that's
it
where you get
right from the. They're chopping it, and they're processing it right away.
right because right. But the very
Okay.
interesting thing is that this precursor form of THC, THCA,
Yeah.
it's not psychoactive in its form.
Okay.
It's perfectly legal.
Okay.
It only turns into THC when heat is applied to it. Very interesting. Oh yeah.
Wow. So of course you went and found vendors, the internet. There's all sorts of websites that
There-
sell THCA cartridges, among other things, right?
Among other THCA products, let's just say, and it's perfectly legal.
Yeah.
They can ship out to, I believe, all states. Maybe there's one or two exceptions. But it's a
Johnny King.
perfectly-
Hold on one second. Johnny King. Pennsylvania is a legal state, right?
For medical, for which I have the card, thank God.
Okay, but now if you were if you wanted to go and get THCA, right, and you went and got that on a website, you brought it back, perfectly legal. So Johnny King could go get that for himself
And
if he wanted to.
these,
Anyway,
these vendors, they also have these third-party companies come
Yep.
in and test the product to ensure that the THC level is below 3%. And as long as it's below 3%, it's perfectly
Then-
legal.
and they can ship it interstate.
Yeah, because they're shipping THCA,
Wow.
THC. So
What do you think about
I
that,
just thought
Johnny? Uh-oh. Hold on, Johnny. You got a problem. Houston, we have a problem. We can't unmute the king. The king can't be unmuted. There we go. Johnny King. There you go.
Okay, Delta 9, which is made from the hemp plant, is sold
Yep.
in many stores and
Yep.
available to the public in Pennsylvania.
I see.
It is very, very popular amongst the young.
The Delta 9. Right. Why the hell? Let me ask a serious question. Why the hell do we have to get to the point where we're breaking it down to, oh, well, yes, well, I'm kind of, I like the Delta 9 thing personally. It's like,
Well,
what the
right,
hell happened to just, this is the problem. You see,
Right.
this is the
Right.
problem. Because what happened with, like, say, the opioid epidemic, right? Not only did the DEA bring it upon us by quotas, by taking it away from the people that actually need it, persecuting them, letting it all come in through the border, but then, they do the same thing where, oh, we'll just adjust a molecule here, a molecule there. Before you know it, we've got this fentanyl, which, by the way, is not medical grade fentanyl you're talking about. This is street fentanyl, which is totally different than anything that any medical patients, and believe me, let me tell you something, folks, medical patients went through hell and still go through hell on earth because of the media using the same terminology as actual medical grade stuff that these people that are suffering actually require and or need to get any quality of life. And so it has really screwed things up. It's killed millions of people. And if you think about it, what is it? It's all a workaround, Scotty.
Right, and that's why I bring up this loophole because instead of going down this route of one molecule change at a time until we're at a point where we're not, that people aren't even consuming what the original product actually even is anymore, right? I mean, they changed the molecules so much to circumvent, all of this, to the point to where you don't even know what you're consuming anymore. So
No
I
doubt.
bring up this loophole because at least with this, you're converting it just back to good old fashioned THC, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's naturally, it's what's already in the plant. It's already in its acidic form.
Let Johnny chime in before. Oh, Jesus, Johnny.
Project something. My wife's brother, who got into an auto accident and a doctor prescribed him pain medication, shut him off. He was forced to go to the street to get his pain medication. And unfortunately, he got some Percocets that were laced with fentanyl. He lost his life because of this. He was murdered because his street drug Percocets were laced with fentanyl. Nobody was charged in this, and his death was ruled accidental.
How do you like that? Now, that brings up a huge problem. And this is something that, of course, in the land of the free should not be going on. What we decide to put in our body, let alone the sanctity of the doctor-patient relationship, should have no intrusion by the government whatsoever. Period. End of story. That is your business between the doctor and the patient. The issue you have now is the medical system is broken. It is absolutely broken. I live it. Scotty lives it. Johnny lives it. What you'll come to find out is that more people, at least here in the United States, have or suffer with things or ailments that create pain, that degrade your ability to function, that degrade your quality of life. And it's much more common than you might think. So whenever you hear, this is part of that, when you see these articles and you watch these pieces from the mainstream media, what you end up getting is a whole heap of propaganda when the truth is much different than what you're being told. Why? Because these problems are much more common than what we're being told. And they do this to isolate us, right? You get isolated, you feel alone. When you feel alone, people tend to act like armadillos, and we just ball up into our shell and we isolate. That's kind of how it is because it's a defensive mode. We are basically animals with our backs against the wall, and we're feeling very vulnerable. It's another thing. It creates a huge vulnerability, and that is really the epidemic. If you want to talk about what an epidemic really is, pain. And pain comes in a lot of different varieties. It doesn't necessarily have to be physical pain, although physical pain is very difficult. And you have a generation or two where the focus has been so four-year university that any tradesmen, the blue-collar workforce, are forced to do 2 and 3 times what our predecessors did because there aren't as many of us around. I'm a maintenance guy. I have been my whole life. Electrician, trained in the Navy, right? And then went into manufacturing. And I can tell you, here in Massachusetts, the average age of a industrial maintenance mechanic is 58 years old. By the time you're 58 as an industrial maintenance mechanic, you're broken. And that is what a lot of us are dealing with, but we're supposed to just keep going and going and going. And oh, by the way, take an effing Tylenol. Well, let me tell you something, folks. For my ailments and for the ailments of the people I work with and things like that, it doesn't cut it. We're well past that. Our joints are worn out. Our muscles are broken down. It just doesn't work. To maintain that quality of life, to maintain that functionality, to maintain that level of intensity that's needed, you have to have these things that are, wouldn't you know it, abundant in this world and should be readily available. And if we didn't prohibit the use of these things, then we wouldn't have had to find workarounds and more workarounds and more workarounds that have gotten deadlier and deadlier and costlier to the
Right.
point
I mean,
where
because
look at where we are now. How do you
right.
fix that?
And I mean, look, you had say you had like prohibition in the 20s, right? And the the government actually poisoned its own citizens
Absolutely.
in order to stop that, right? You had
Over
was it the
10,000 of our own citizens back
yeah,
then.
the federal poisoning program is
That's
literally
correct.
what it was called, and so it just shows, and then on top of that, right, you had all of the dangers of prohibition, the black market, then you started, getting liquor from wherever, right? You don't know if it's being processed like it's supposed to, and are you going to go blind, and all of this stuff, and
Yeah, when they were taking the
you know,
industrial
and
alcohols. Yeah. Because
right, and then
why not? I mean, it's a workaround, right?
marijuana laws and all that stuff, right? So then it created a whole black market
Of
of
synthetics.
dangerous synthetics, right? Like K2 and Spice and all of that weird stuff that ended up coming out, where
They
people
just
thought
had
that
those
they were
Kansas City Chief fans that just died in the backyard of that place, right? Of the one guy. And they were saying something along the lines of it could be drug induced because they had, I think they said that there was definitely Spice or K2 there.
really. I've been wondering what was I heard about what
I'll
was
bet
going
you
on
it
with that
comes out.
case, but I
Yeah.
didn't know that
I'll
that
bet
was
you it comes out that they have some toxicological agents in their system. I'm
right.
just saying.
And all of that weird synthetic stuff, it's essentially they just take like potpourri and then they just spray it with whatever this chemical is, and uh, you know these younger kids and stuff are buying it under the assumption that they're buying marijuana, right? Not
Right.
knowing that it's just like potpourri sprayed with chemical,
That's
and
terrible.
then
Terrible
yeah, and
shit.
it's horrible, and it causes like was it what they call it, excited delirium, the same stuff that happens with people that are on bath salts and stuff, and it's a horrible thing, and it completely unnecessary, would have never even happened if there was no prohibition on marijuana.
Well, let me say this. Let me say that because this is going to segue nicely into this next piece, which again is something that we should be paying attention to, folks. We have an opportunity here to really dial back that government power and do so in a very good way, in ways that, quite frankly, don't happen too often. It's in the Supreme Court's hands now, but the more and more we can get people to understand the importance of these cases, the better off everybody's going to be. These types of events don't happen too often, and so what I'm talking about is something called Chevron deference. You've heard me talk about it the last few podcasts, and the Supreme Court right now is going through um, a couple of cases that are going to challenge Chevron deference. And so I'm on the SCOTUS blog right now so I can kind of give you it straight from the horse's mouth what Chevron deference is and why this is so important. And it is going to affect if the Supreme Court, first of all, I don't think it's going to be as clean as just discarding Chevron, but I do see them reining in the executive branch of our government. And it has been 40 years too long. This should never have happened. Um, However, I don't think the judiciary actually understood or could have the foresight to know that it would be so abused. It's the only thing I could think of. But anyway, Amy Howe of the SCOTUS blog, and this is right from the Supreme Court, says Supreme Court likely to discard Chevron. Again, I disagree. I think they'll probably rein it in, but I don't think we're going to see it totally go away. I would love to see it go away. But she writes, it's been nearly 40 years since the Supreme Court indicated in Chevron versus Natural Resources Defense Council that courts should defer to an agency's reasonable interpretation of an ambiguous statute. After more than 3.5 hours of oral arguments on Wednesday, and this was 2 weeks ago, it seems unlikely that the rule outlined in that case, known as the Chevron doctrine or Chevron deference, will survive in its current form. A majority of the justices seem ready to jettison the doctrine or at least very significantly limited it. The court's ruling could have ripple effects across the government, where agencies frequently use highly trained experts to interpret and implement federal law. Let me give you an example. Okay, so we went through the COVID bullshit, and during the COVID bullshit, we had to put on masks, and there was even these mandates that happened, and those were all done utilizing the Chevron doctrine. Congress didn't say explicitly to mandate this, right? However, they had their experts, and they all went and utilized the ambiguity in the law to bring that about. That's Chevron deference. Right. And to do away with that,
they can say, because they can say, well, because the experts say this, then that gives us carte blanche to enact these mandates or implement, these things just because an expert said so, right? It's like appeal to authority in a way.
Correct. That's basically what it is. And I'm going to get Johnny's opinion on this towards the end, just so that he chimes in, because this has the ability to really muck things up for the powers that shouldn't be, and the deep state and all that stuff. So it goes on to say that the fishing companies here are basically trying to get this to go away. The court's ruling, of course, could have ripple effects, although the doctrine was relatively non-controversial when it was first introduced in 1984. In recent years, conservatives, including some members of the Supreme Court, have called for it to be overruled. The plea to overturn the Chevron doctrine came to the court in 2 cases challenging a rule issued by the National Marine Fisheries Service that requires the herring industry to bear the cost of observers on fishing boats. Applying Chevron, both the U.S. Court of Appeals of the District of Columbia Circuit and the U.S. Court of Appeals of the First Circuit, which is New England. So think about that just for a second. New England and the District of Columbia. Do you think they're going to side with the government, or do you think they're going to side with the fishermen? Of course they're going to side with the government, because you can't, there aren't many more subservient or complicit districts than those 2. We'll just put it that way. And so they found it to be a reasonable interpretation of the current federal law. Now, the fishing companies came to the Supreme Court asking the justices to weigh in on the rule itself, but also to overrule Chevron. Roman Martinez, representing one group of fishing vessels, told the justices that the Chevron doctrine undermined the duty of courts to say what the law is and violates the federal law governing administrative agencies, which similarly require courts to undertake a fresh review of legal questions. Under the Chevron doctrine, he observed, even if all 9 Supreme Court justices agree that the fishing vessel's interpretation of federal fishing law is better than the government's interpretation, they would still be required to defer to the agency's interpretation as long as it was reasonable. So such a result, Martinez concluded, is not consistent with the rule of law. Seems pretty reasonable to me. Now, arguing on behalf of the second group was Paul Clement. And Paul Clement is arguing for Loper Bright Enterprises. And so what they're saying is their margins for herring and this is the herring industry. So they go out and they get their herring. The margin from what they pay, their overhead all in, to what it costs them to operate is very little. They make very little money. When they have to pay for these babysitters, for lack of a better term, it basically torpedoes their whole business. So they're like, we can't continue to do this, you know? Representing the Biden administration in this is U.S. Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar, who urged the justices to leave the Chevron doctrine in place. Come on, tell me, it has deep roots in this court's jurisprudence. Under the doctrine of stare decisis, the idea that the courts should generally adhere to their prior cases, the court would need a truly extraordinary justification to overrule it, you see, which is bullshit, because the court can overrule whatever the hell they want to overrule. They're the Supreme Court. I don't get it. So anyway, here's the interesting thing. The interesting thing is, not only do you have the conservative side that are saying, yeah, this is a problem, but you also have the other side that's saying it too, that while Chevron has a specific purpose and the need is legit. And I say that because could you imagine how hogged up the courts would be if each time there was a problem, they had to go to the courts to work it out? You'd have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of cases that would just totally and completely paralyze the system. I get it. I get it. However, there needs to be a lot more of a focus to what they can and cannot implement. Because right now it's all broad stroke, everything. They have carte blanche. And as long as it's reasonable, well, what the hell's reasonable? Johnny King, I have a question to you. What, my friend, is reasonable?
What is reasonable is to let the people govern themselves.
Oh, you think we could do that?
I didn't hear you, my friend.
Do you think that we could do that? Do you think that the people could actually do that? I mean, we're smart enough to do that? You think so?
Absolutely. This is what this country was founded on, was individual liberty and the people being able to govern themselves. We are not a democracy. We are a republic, irregardless of what the people in Congress and Republican and Democratic masters want you to think when they say democracy. We are a republic, which means individual liberty. We get to govern ourselves. And when we get liberty.
So, okay, so that, and that's all well and good. And I absolutely agree with that. I have been seeing, Scotty, a lot of talk about how a Trump administration or passing this funding bill in its current form, you hear would be, it would threaten democracy. It would threaten democracy, they say. You hear that being thrown around a lot lately, don't you?
Yeah, that's a term that they try to hammer into the heads of the masses, right? Because it's a very powerful propagandist sort of slogan or a term that they use, right? You know, democracy is under threat. This could undermine the democracy that we've enjoyed, and it's because it's a powerful statement, right? Because right, if you, it's like I said last week when we were on, or the week before, I guess, when you know, because democracy, right? We're all taught that democracy is the foundation of Western civilization, right? And so everything that we do our whole lives, everything is based off of democracy. And so if something threatens that, that's a very serious thing, and you should really pay attention to that. And that's
Johnny
but,
King,
but like,
hold on 1 second. While you finish your thought, I'm going to bring up a graphic really quick,
right.
and I want to show how what you're saying is very relevant and has history.
Right,
to
and like Johnny King said, we are not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic, And so every time they recycle that same talking point of our democracy is under threat, it's such a threat to our democracy, no, because we're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic, and they want people to forget that.
You're absolutely right. So I want to show you this little caption right here. This is pretty interesting. Of course, you hear me talk about Edward Bernays ad nauseum. Why? Because really that guy single-handedly brought us to where we are today. It was him being the go-to guy for all of the problems that presidents and every freaking control freak on Wall Street, if they ever had a problem, they went to Edward Bernays, and Bernays got it done. And World War I was an enormous problem for Woodrow Wilson. And the reason why was because people didn't want to go to war. We had just been through the Spanish-American War, and we were a war-weary country. The Civil War was still on the minds of people even 50 years, 60 years after that happened. We didn't want to go to war. So they needed some help. And wouldn't you know it, look at this. Bernays and journalist Walter Lippmann joined forces to assist Woodrow Wilson with the World War I effort. Their goal was to turn the gun-shy American into an anti-German force to enter the trenches. The slogan, "Make the world safe for democracy," was emphatically embraced by Americans who helped end World War I. So his ability to motivate the masses through propaganda inspired future leaders of other countries to turn to these practices in the years that followed. And wouldn't you know it, you're hearing it here, you're hearing it in the media time and time again, where they're using democracy as that thing, that
the rallying call, the slogan.
That's the yeah, but that's all it is, folks. When you see that and you hear that, your spidey sense should tingle, right, Johnny King? It should absolutely tingle.
Joe, for the people watching your show, I just want to say, democracy is two wolves and a sheep voting on what is for dinner. A republic, for which our forefathers founded this country on, was for individual liberty and responsibility for self.
Right, exactly. and the interesting thing is that, right, so you have these right, the woke lefties and
Yes.
and all of these they're supposed to be all
wait
for,
a minute. Let's just say this. You have programmed people because it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on.
Right.
They're all being
saying, yeah. But I'm just saying that vocal crowd that that is in that paradigm, I guess you could say, or that group or whatever, they all preach for, was it inclusion and equity and
Yes.
and equality and all of this stuff.
But I really want people to pay attention
but
to
from what, right, but from what John just said, right, and from what we just, democracy is two wolves and a sheep voting on
that's
what
just
to have
it.
for dinner. So
People
how
don't
is that
know
very inclusive, and how is
People
that very
don't,
equal,
because
right?
Well, that shows you that people don't. Well, first of all, they don't know they confuse a democratic process with
Mhm.
democracy. Okay,
Right.
it's a democratic process that we go through. It doesn't mean you're a democracy. Okay, that's the problem. See, in a constitutional
Exactly.
republic,
Right.
the minority has rights. In a democracy, it's mob rule. But we utilize a democratic process to come about solutions or whatever. Like if you need to fix a problem, you create a law. That law is voted on by the entirety of the Senate and the House of Representatives, right?
And it's
And that's a
it's very
democratic process. But that doesn't mean we have a democracy.
right.
That's
Exactly.
where the
And
confusion comes in.
whenever you said, hey, I you know what I don't know, man. People really need to educate themselves on like what our system is actually supposed to be, or
Well,
what we really were intended to
civics
be.
and social studies don't exactly teach you, or you got to remember something. And this is the hard thing. This is the hard
Oh, and
truth.
the mob rule thing, right? When you brought up the mob rule thing, right? So democracy is a mob rule. And what do we see going on right now all over the internet?
Yeah,
Social media. It's mob rule.
mob
It's
rule.
cancel culture, mob rule,
Sure.
and so maybe of course they do love their democracy because maybe
Well,
they
no,
don't
because
want
well,
a
think about this
constitutional
though,
republic.
and you're still right. But think about this: when you send your kids to school, when we went to school, the idea is to teach you prison culture. That's it. That is to bring you, to institutionalize you, to make you a subservient individual. Not individual. No, wrong choice of words. A subservient chattel member.
Yeah,
And that's basically what you are. You're a
it's to get
slave.
you used to Pavlovian
Sure.
responses. Go to work at
But it
this
does you
time.
but it does you no good. It does you no good to know what a democracy is or anything else because it's not relevant to you. As long as you go and do what you're supposed to do, it shouldn't matter. And they use these words because they know people don't know what it means. And they know that through the bullshit that's taught in public school and even private schools, it's the curriculum that gets out there and it says, oh, yeah, the United States has been a democracy since 1781 or 1787 and this and that, when we never have been a democracy. No, not one day in our life have we been a democracy. We don't want to be a democracy. If we are a democracy, wait a minute, we're acting more and more like a democracy all the time. It kind of goes down the same roads of how many planks of the Communist Manifesto are in place here in the United States. And wouldn't you know it, probably about 7 or 8 out of 10 when you look at it. And I invite everybody out there, pull up a copy of the 10 planks and just read them and see how many are here. That's why when I always hear the let freedom ring and all this stuff, it's all baloney because you can sing all the songs you want. You can hear how free we are and everything else. Folks, we're not free. We're not free. Look at the debt. Great, great, great thing here is this debt that we have going on. I think December we ran a something like $600 billion deficit just in December. It was something just obscene, right? And it was like 10 times more than what we normally would. And of course, it's all centered around the fact that we're having all this cheap debt that we didn't pay interest on mature, and we're having to get debt at 5% or whatever it is that the government's getting it now, but certainly a lot more than it was. And we're starting to see a hockey stick start to go where you just basically go right along and then all of a sudden that interest whoop, and all of that, the majority of it is all stuff that people have become dependent on, whether it be Medicare, whether it be Social Security, disability, you name it, veterans, and I hate to say it, and vets, I get it. We don't get enough, but no one does. And that's my point. Johnny King, we're getting to the point where something's got to give. And when that something gives, people aren't going to like it.
No, they won't. But I must interject. The greatest prison in the entire world is not one built with walls, but built with one for which men think they are free. This country has more people behind bars per capita than any 3 countries in the world combined. Are we the land of the free? I think not.
I think that it's all propaganda, just like I said. And folks, if you haven't read it, it's a good read. And you can download it right off of archive.org. You can, it's still in print, but Edward Bernays' Propaganda. You can read Crystallizing Public Opinion. That was his first book in 1923. 28, he wrote Propaganda. That was his capstone. And wouldn't you know it, every leader, basically since Calvin Coolidge, have used this thing to their benefit. So understand that when you hear these terms, again, they should give you the chill right down your spine. It should say, what are they trying to do? What are they trying to sell? What are they trying to peddle? What is going on? It's important to look at what the courts are going through right now, because this is pivotal. If we can get more push on these justices to rein in the government when it comes to utilizing this Chevron deference, it can help a myriad of people and really give a lot of that power back. Give us the ability to make choices. Give us the ability to read the damn labels. I don't need a government watchdog going out on a herring boat to determine that my herring is safe to eat, or that they're doing it in a place that is environmentally friendly. There's nothing that's not corrupt anymore, or hasn't been corrupted through special interest infiltrating all of these administrative branches and offices all over the United States, all over the world for that matter. So it is important that we rein this back in, and this is a great way to do that. It's a great way to do that. And it really kind of gets into, what are these control freaks really, really concerned about? What are they concerned about? And so we just had Davos. Davos just happened, World Economic Forum. And the Epoch Times wrote a great piece, Davos Dictators and the Real Threats to Our Democracy. And I love the Epoch Times. I think it's a great resource. But when it comes to the awakening of the world, and we used to hear Zbigniew Brzezinski talk about it quite frequently, especially at his stomping ground, the Council on Foreign Relations. The awakening of all of these people is by far and away more of a threat to them than any amount of weapons, any amount of money, any amount of anything. When they can't control the information stream, they're sunk, and they know it. And the issue that you have now is they've lost control of the information stream. And that should...
Didn't Brzezinski say, he said, in the past it was easier to control 1 million people than to kill 1 million people. Now it's easier to kill 1 million people than to control 1 million people.
And even that's not set in stone. Look at COVID.
Right.
Look at COVID. Right. I mean, I think that they were expecting that to be much more effective than it was. Almost a la the swine flu many years ago. Remember the swine flu? And that was a big to-do, and it fizzled, but totally engineered, totally released. So all of these things that happen, no wonder government trust is in the toilet. Who the hell trusts the government now, Johnny King?
Ain't nobody trusts the government, Joe. Not anybody with half a brain. They're becoming so controlling now They're coming after people with backyard gardens, saying that backyard gardens are contributing to global warming in favor of corporate growers.
You see, what happens is, Johnny King, the places like Cargill and Cisco, see, they can manage that carbon much better than you can in your backyard. Just like wood stoves and gas stoves, you see, those aren't safe. Not just for the environment, John.
Hey, and this goes
You
back to
can,
that court case you
you're
were
going to
just
burn
talking about,
yourself.
Joe.
Yeah, you're going to burn yourself.
Right.
That's how far-reaching this shit has, man. It's like, oh, it's huge. It's huge.
And it's all because some expert said that the garden was contributing to global warming, and based off of their expert analysis, this is what the government should do. And then they go and do it.
Go ahead, Johnny.
100% of government-funded scientists agree on global warming and anything else the government wants to shove down our throat.
Yep. That's the way it is. Remember, it was it was back in the day, I think it was, smoking, right? 20,000 doctors recommend Chesterfields for their ease on the throat and everything else. It doesn't matter. All of that is propaganda, folks. Really, what it boils down to is what information are the doctors using and who has influenced the doctors, a la follow the money. What you have is, in this age, everybody with a smartphone, anybody with a smartphone is an investigative journalist. That's why people like that Washington Post reporter, that Taylor Lawrence, I think is her name. She routinely has meltdowns because of the way that the mainstream media has kind of lost its power, its luster, its everything. I mean, look at the layoffs going on right now. They're in a straight up panic, mainstream media, at least on print, because they can't make money. So then what happened? These billionaires came in to bail them out, right? Los Angeles Times, Washington Post. Well, look what happened. They're bleeding 50, 60, 70 million dollars a year. I don't care how much of a billionaire you are. You're not going to go ahead and let an organization that you own bleed that much money over that amount of time. You're going to do something about it. And that's exactly what's happening. You're seeing a gutting of some of these, what they call institutions of media, when really all they were basically, guardians, if you will, of the truth. Yeah.
The gatekeepers
of the truth. Yes. Matter of fact,
right.
I think it was a Wall Street Journal editor at the World Economic Forum. She had a meltdown over it. I'm going to try and find that because it was a nice little old piece.
I also heard that the president of Argentina gave a nice fiery little speech over there that kind of...
He certainly
probably,
did. We can get into that too.
That kind of got them wrestling in their boots a little bit. Kind of remind me a lot of Nigel Farage whenever he would go and school them over at the EU Parliament. But
I'm trying to find it. Hold on. I'm getting there. God dang it! Here
he's
it is.
hacking into the mainframe. He's getting the info.
I done found it. I think I did. I just gotta, let's see. There's one. There's two. All these pop-ups. Yes. Okay. So it was Defending the Truth was the name of the little breakout session they had. And this is interesting. I'm going to even, let's see, we'll share this here. We'll go here, share, and there. All right. So take a look at this.
When there's a big news event, a big world event, people still come to the legacy brands. We still have a lot of trust. But I think you only have to go back. I think we have to maintain that trust, and we have to work at maintaining it in a way that we didn't have to do not so long ago. So if you go back really not that long ago, as I say, we owned the news. We were the gatekeepers, and we very much owned the facts as well. If it said it in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, that was a fact.
Oh, what did I say?
You go to all sorts of different sources for the news, and they're much more questioning about what we're saying.
Oh, yes.
We were the gatekeepers.
We were the
chosen
gatekeepers.
ones.
Yes, we owned the truth. We owned the truth. Like, you cocky biatch. That is just, and this is what, it hurts. It boggles the mind. It just baffles me sometimes at how cocky and arrogant and just straight up evil these people are. They are. They're evil. Every bit of evil. And that's what they seek to do. They seek to control the information stream. Why? Because if they can control the information stream, they control the masses. I will tell you this. What's going on in the world right now, America, looks nothing like you understand it. Because what's been fed to us is not what's going on. In hour number 2, I'm going to talk about a recent naval battle that we lost against the Houthis. Yeah, we lost. We retreated. And that constitutes a defeat. And we weren't told that in the mainstream media. Why? Because who would tout that? Right?
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, it happened. So in hour number 2, we're going to talk about that, how the Red Sea is affecting much more than the flow of oil or this Israel boycott.
Things are getting spicy down there.
It is. It's getting really spicy. And then we're also going to get into all of these self-inflicted shortages, too, to try and drill down exactly why the hell we're all broke. Johnny King, any final thoughts before hour number 1 is done?
Yes, I would like to thank President Potato Head for the condition that we're in today. If we had strong leadership in the United States, we wouldn't be on the verge of a third world war with China and Russia. So thank you, douchebag Biden, and your crack-addicted boy.
Well, I find that a very, very warm and compassionate plea from a very concerned citizen of these here 50 states. Hour number 1 is done. Hour number 2 is on the way. Don't you go away. Johnny King, you're killing me with that crap. When we come back again, we'll talk about the Houthis. We'll talk about how we lost and so much more. You're listening to KGRA DB, KGRADB.com. We'll be right back.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Did you know 75% of Americans are chronically dehydrated? If you struggle with focus, run low on energy, or when it's time to finally sleep, you simply can't, this can all be linked to dehydration, and Fuel Up has the answer. Our proprietary formula contains the finest cellular hydration with the strongest immune-enhancing natural ingredients. The Fuel Up system is made up of 3 different incredibly tasting varieties. Wake kickstarts your day with a jolt of caffeine. Play boosts focus while hydrating your cells. Rest not only helps you relax, but also rejuvenates your cells while you sleep. Here's what our clients have to say.
I really don't miss my coffee, and you can tell the difference.
So I'm going to take it for the energy,
I'm taking for the play. I'm gonna take it, all day.
And it works. That's the thing. It works. We love it.
Take the Fuel Up Challenge now, where we offer a Feel the Difference money back guarantee. Fuel Up for life.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected, only at kgradb.com.
Uh-oh, Joe. I cannot hear you.
Oh, yeah. So I was muted, but thank you. Welcome back. It's hour number 2. KGRADB.com. Hey, by the way, guys, we got some great new shows that precede us. You may have heard it already. However, let me tell you something. It is awesome. So Into the Fire is an unbelievable true crime show. You want to check that out because true crime is like nutsy right now in America. More and more people are getting into it. That's another thing with citizen reporting. True crime has just gone. I mean, more and more people are helping solve crime and cold cases than ever before.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
You don't need government. Look at this. You just need people that are interested.
Basically, you're like crowdsourcing investigations.
It's awesome.
Stuff.
There's some really good stuff going on there. And then there's Wiretap, which directly precedes us, and that's kind of like Freedom Link. So it's a really cool thing that's happening here at KGRADB. So check it out, because I don't know about you guys, but I love that true crime stuff, and the brain loves it too. She keeps it, freaking cool. So I was telling you guys about the Houthis, right?
Right.
So funny enough, when the Cole was bombed, now this was back in 2000. I was in Yemen like 6 months before it happened. As a matter of fact, I was at the same dolphin pier refueling 6 months before that happened, at that exact same place. And I knew exactly how they did it, because it was really crazy. When you pull in, they've got these garbage scows that come up. There's no security. It was just like, no one was comfortable. No one was comfortable. And that's in Aden, Yemen. The way it works out in Aden, you had a long, basically pier that went out to a big dolphin, for lack of a better term. And then everything came out to you. And you didn't go close to the shore. And if you had to, you didn't want to. I'll tell you that. It was crazy. Again, it's something that Americans would have no concept. Like, the worst places in the United States couldn't shake a stick at Yemen or Djibouti or anywhere in that region of the world. It's very, very different. You've got basically raw sewage that just flows down the sides of the roads in swales. You have diseases rampant. So, and of course, poor, very, very, very poor. to the point where one of the things you do in the Navy a lot is paint. Just because you're constantly dealing with rust and everything else. So, the bosun mates who do most of the painting would paint, and then when they're done, their used coveralls, they would throw them in the trash, and the trash would get thrown away at the pier. People would fight over those coveralls. They would fight for them because they had nothing. So this torn, ripped, stank ass, painted on coveralls was like gold. That's the kind of the difference that you're dealing with on a social level. And that allows these warlords to come in and really take over because people are so desperate. And you have a very willing population that'll do just about anything for you, because anything that you give them, whether it be a henchman or anything, it just instantly improves their quality of life more than anything they have ever imagined.
Right.
And it's really that bad. So here are the Houthis. And to give you an idea, the Houthis have been at war with Saudi Arabia for a long time before they came to a truce. They are a willing puppet of Iran. As a matter of fact, Iran is they're a proxy for Iran, and quite frankly, have a constant stream of things coming into.
This is the proxy war between Saudi Arabia and Iran.
That's
this
right.
Whole Houthi thing, yeah.
But they're able to do this, and this is to Johnny King's point. They're able to do this because we are being perceived as weak in the world. I personally don't think people understand how important that really is, because
perception is huge.
You can be a peaceful nation, right? But when it comes to actually like maintaining your economy and open sea lanes and things like that, if you don't act and be decisive about it, then what's to stop them from doing other things? Taking it a step further, to Johnny's point, why in Ukraine would Russia not escalate things based on what's happened already? I would say they've been pretty good at being restrained, considering the fact that, we're sending Abrams tanks and long-range cruise missiles.
Considering what they're capable of and what they could do if they really wanted to, they've been, yeah.
Johnny King.
Joe, it's my it's my education for listening to independent media that it's not Russia that's the aggressor.
Right.
NATO violated treaty by moving east closer to Russia,
right,
by trying to get Ukraine into NATO, as well as the Scandinavian countries such as Norway and Sweden into NATO, for which Russia is trying to defend their borders. That is the aggressor.
So let me give a historical background on that, because that's important to understand. So back in early 60s, President Kennedy confronted the Russians, right? And of course, everybody remembers the confrontation that happened between Khrushchev and Kennedy that could have very well ended up being World War III or the end of the world, but it didn't. But a lot of people don't realize what that was all about. And it really had nothing to do with Cuba to begin with, right? Cuba was a response to the actual problem. The actual problem being we were parking our Jupiter missiles in Turkey at the Russian border. And the Russians from Stalin on always wanted to maintain a buffer zone. Post-World War II, if you take a look at World War II and you look at the dialogue between the leaders, Stalin was adamant that there be a buffer zone between Russia and Europe. And that goes for all around Russia, but basically that's what they want and always have wanted that. So the agreement to get the Cuba issue handled was to remove the Jupiter missiles from Turkey, and both would do so in a way to save face that would not damage their reputation domestically. And it worked. And that philosophy was maintained even through the Cold War. But after the Cold War and when the Soviet Union fell, the West and NATO found that to be a weakness, right? They were weak. And because they were weak, we encroached on that buffer zone. And now you've got Finland, you've got Sweden that have now become, those are right on the border. You've got Lithuania. I mean, Lithuania, it's like this big, right? It's tiny. It's like Rhode Island. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. What significance is there to bringing Lithuania into NATO except to snub your nose at Russia? And that's exactly what we've done. So we've taunted and taunted and taunted and taunted and taunted. Not to mention the fact that in Ukraine, we were also doing experimentation and testing and things that we weren't supposed to be doing that close to Russia. And Russia had enough. So Russia moved in. Now, Russia did not plan nor think that they were going to take over all of Ukraine with 200,000 Russian troops. That was never the intention. And Putin is very adamant
their
about
intent
that.
their intent was only to annex Crimea.
That's right. Well, Crimea and then the Donbass. And the areas where they said, well, you know, those are Russian separatists. Those are our land. We're annexing it. It was never supposed to be the whole of Ukraine.
Right.
But they kind of went on a denazification practice. Why do they call it Nazification? Why do they say they're Nazis all over there? You have to understand the history of the Nazis. You have to understand who Hitler dealt with, who Hitler did business with. It was all the New York bankers. It was all the Americans and the Europeans that wanted a dictatorship through a fascist dictatorship in the United States. They were trying to bring it about. To do so, they needed to perfect a lot of the things. It was kind of like a beta test, almost like China was today, right? So China's a beta test today. Germany was that beta test in World War II, which is why Warburg ran IG Farben, and you had the tentacles all throughout Germany. Ford provided all their trucks. Just an unbelievable thing. The Prescott Bush was charged with trading with the enemy, you know, because of his dealings and being pro-Nazi. So that's why Russia calls it denazification. There's a history there. Yes, and they're drawing on that history that we don't know. Go ahead.
Right. And more to what you were saying about the history of Ukraine and this, you know, quote unquote denazification of Ukraine is, you know, during the 30s and the beginning of the Second World War, you know, Hitler stormed across Ukraine and quote unquote liberated them, I guess you could say, or whatever, you know, during, you know, Operation Barbarossa and pushing into Russia and all of this stuff. And you had a lot of Ukrainians that actually joined Germany and Hitler and the Nazis and fought against Stalin, because you have to remember Stalin starved over 3 million Ukrainians, and it was called the Holodomor which was basically like the Ukrainian Holocaust, basically. And so you had a lot of Ukrainians that were very, very, very resentful and angry towards Stalin and the Communist Party,
Right, and
and
rightfully so.
They ended up aligning themselves with Hitler because, I mean, what is it, the lesser of two evils or whatever, right? And they fought for them, and they, you
Right.
had a whole bunch of these Ukrainian forces that were aligned literally with the Nazis.
Right.
And after the war, okay, and then going on into where we are now, a lot of those people in Ukraine see them as like freedom fighters or whatever, fighting against the communist repression, and all of this stuff. So their role, in being aligned with Nazi Germany is actually looked upon quite fondly among a lot of the population in the Ukraine, and a lot of those people and a lot of these groups that are now running Ukraine and that were involved in overthrowing the government back in 2014 or whatever, when John McCain and Lindsey Graham and everybody were down there fomenting a revolution basically in Ukraine. A lot of these groups, that have taken over Ukraine literally have that Nazi they look at the whole Nazi thing as a pretty cool. They like it, So
I like this question. I want to just briefly touch on it a little bit. Who's better or
it's
worse?
A classic,
right?
Good classic question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The answer to that is neither. And
yeah,
both.
They're
neither
both
and both.
They're both equally horrible, but you've got to understand that there's a whole history and component of Ukraine where Germany and the Nazis and everything, they're revered and they're not looked upon as this
no, because they liberated them from being starved out.
And so a lot of these groups now that are in Ukraine, that are fighting, that are running Ukraine and all of that, they literally kind of have that ideology, and that's why
descended
Putin's saying they're descended from that, and Putin's like, look, we're trying to denazify the Ukraine because they want to bring. A lot of these groups have this Ukrainian racial purity thing that they're all into, and a lot of just legit, real Nazi, because that term has the term has been so watered down because everybody gets called a Nazi nowadays that.
Right.
You can
and then of course
and somebody calls you a Nazi, but
it's a nation building thing too. Now we're at a point,
right?
And this is the interesting part of this story is that the United States is coming to an end as far as being the world power, the only world power, and quite frankly, we have to. This has been a long time coming. It should have happened a while back. It should never have happened in the first place.
Right.
But we have overextended ourselves to the point where very, very difficult decisions are going to have to be made. We're currently watching them underway in Argentina. And I think you brought that up was Malay. I'm going to find his what he said at the World Economic Forum because I think it's important that people see and hear what he said. And so we're going to watch and see. I'm going to pull this out because it says, oh, he broke the internet. And I think he did.
Yeah, it was quite wild.
He is a very, very, if he can pull this off, it's going to be huge. He just had strikes yesterday in Argentina where, I mean, you'll see it looks pretty bad. But understand, that's all the unions.
They're going to have to deal with this rough patch for the next couple of years or something.
Yep.
But once they get through it, then it's if he pulls it off, it'll be pretty amazing how.
So we start off here, Infowars.com. 2 months after Libertarian firebrand Javier Milei was elected president of the Latin basket case Argentina, pledging to overhaul the economy and openly warning a period of brutal austerity and pain is coming. The initial euphoria is fading fast and being replaced with shock and horror of what comes next. And I can't say it enough. We have to pay attention to what's going on in Argentina, because it very certainly can happen here. As a matter of fact, we got a taste of it on a very, very small, microscopic, molecular scale when our inflation hit 9%. We had it in the late 70s, early 80s, when inflation was running about 20%. We have never hit 200%. That, if you think about it, prices going up month over month about 18%. That's pretty egregious. So they had a strike yesterday or on Wednesday. Everybody took to the street. They went to Buenos Aires, downtown Buenos Aires, brought it to a standstill. They say in what was called an unprecedented mobilization, never before in modern Argentinian history has there been a mass strike with less than 7 weeks into the presidency. But leaders from Argentina's largest labor union, the guys who are used to, pardon me, yes, impressed mobilization, yes. Basically, these are the guys that ran the government before. They always got the handouts from the government because they were always in control of it, right? They said the nationwide protests reflected the urgency they feel as Milei pursues the radical economic and political reforms he likens to shock therapy. And it's absolutely true. It's shock therapy. You have to get people out of the mindset that the government is there to provide you with everything you need, right? Look at right now with our immigration issue that we have, right? Big problem. You can't, first of all, say that the United States is not a nation of immigrants. It is. We come from somewhere else. We didn't start here, right? Unless you're a Native American, you didn't start here. Your family started somewhere else. We all came here. However, most of us during that time, when our families immigrated, there was not the social safety net that was here, that is here now, right? If there wasn't a social safety net, none of this would be a problem. None of it. We would still have issues with people not wanting immigrants to come in, but you wouldn't have near the problem because you wouldn't have near the people coming because they wouldn't be getting free handouts. They would be getting like a bowl of soup. You'd be getting like a blanket.
There'd be no incentive. No incentive.
Thank you. All your incentive is gone.
Right. Because the reason we had migration in the 1800s is completely different than the reason we have migration now.
Exactly.
People in the 1800s were actually coming over here with the mindset of settling down, establishing a foundation, and becoming a productive member of society,
Yes.
and embracing the American, the quote unquote American dream, if you will, and now the people that are coming here are not coming over here with those intentions, because all they know is that if they come over here, they will just be provided everything. Things will be handed to them, and they will just be and so there is no motivation to become a productive member of society. There's no motivation to start a business or do anything like that. Everybody coming over now, or most of them, I would say, of course not all. I mean, you're going to have your outliers, and you do have your people trying to come here to, establish a better life and whatnot. But the mass percentage of them are not coming over here for those reasons, and all it's doing is putting a burden and a strain on.
There's a whole myriad of reasons why they're coming over. However, the biggest one is the freebies. and freebies that are not available to us, the people that pay for them. So that's already a big rub. Well, then you have an entirely new voting base that's coming about because a lot of, like, say here, Massachusetts, it's a hotbed of revolution, right? Now it's the hotbed of craziness, of insanity, where you have people that aren't even citizens of the country. And say what you will about citizenship, but the part of the whole voting thing is you got to be a citizen. So, okay, citizen. No, you don't have to be a citizen anymore. As a matter of fact, you don't even need an ID. You just got to show up because that's what we need, because that's the fair thing to do, Johnny. It's the woke thing to do. It's the right thing to do, Johnny.
Joe, in California, they're bringing the illegals in and they're making them police officers. They're telling the illegals that if you want to be an American citizen, you join our military and you serve honorably. When you get discharged, you will be given American citizenship. But you know as well as I do that you take an oath to the Constitution when you join the military. You take an oath to the Constitution when you become a police officer. These people that are coming across our borders now have no allegiance to our Constitution. How can they enforce our laws and understand our way of life when they have no part in it?
Right. That's a very good point you made, John. And also, remember, when you're going to become a citizen, you have to go through your citizenship test. You have to.
That's right. You got to learn English.
Learn English, learn the basics of how our government works, and all of this stuff. You have to be educated on how things function in this country in order for you to assimilate and become part of our country.
That's right.
Now, when you have people just flooding through completely unchecked, they don't have no idea of how this country works. They have no idea the system of government, our laws, anything like that.
And I want to be perfectly clear. There's NGOs out there that are basically getting these people, convincing them to go, and then half of them, I guarantee you, I would say 80 to 90% of these people would not be doing this if these NGOs weren't down there pushing them to go.
Now you're starting to see a lot of these immigrants go, hey, whoa, this is not what I signed up for, and I am not getting this. This is not the land of milk and honey that I was promised. That we would show up here and everything would be hunky dory, because now I've made this trip and I'm sleeping in front of a police station in Chicago, right?
Dude, I'm sleeping at Logan International Airport, Johnny King.
Joe, one of the reasons why Nadler and Schumer and the Democratic Party want these people coming over our border to join our military is because militarily, there is a shortfall in volunteers. Up to 70,000 people that are not volunteering for our military.
Great point.
Because they have demasculated our young people to not be him, but they, thems, and they want nothing to do with defending the country that they were taught to hate all through their school.
Let me even take it a step farther. One of the major sources of the next round of recruits are the vet's kids, right? Because the vet, who's very proud of the time that he or she served, will typically say, son, daughter, you want to follow in the footsteps? You want to do this? Well, I learned because I went through, so now I'm going to help you navigate it. And you typically
a generational thing becomes a generational
you have a better opportunity because you know things that you didn't, right?
Right.
But all these vets are telling their kids, stay the hell out. I know I did. And I know I tell anybody that is even thinking about doing it, do not do it.
Right.
Why? Because you're going to sell your soul, number one. Number two, it's not going to be what you think it's going to be, because it's not going to be like when I was in. My first deployment, dude, I hit 24 different ports in 6 months. It was effing phenomenal. I can't even begin to say it, but after 9/11, everything changed. Everything changed. And then you add the woke aspect to it. Oh, forget it. Forget it.
Right. And I mean, with the current geopolitical climate the way it is right now, and we have Mr. Potato Head running the show. Would you want your kids joining the military with the way things are going around? Absolutely
Hells
not.
No.
And so right, they got to try to find a way to fill those ranks somehow, I guess.
So and to your point, it's showing, right? So this brings us to what I was saying earlier with the Houthis. We recently had an incident where, and I got to bring this up because it really, really, truly makes me sick. We had two tankers that the USS Gravely, I believe, was escorting. And I'm trying to pull it up now so I get the right story. But basically it goes like this. USS Gravely is escorting the ship. And the Houthis fire 3 ballistic anti-ship ballistic missiles at the ship. One gets through the missile umbrella. So if you know an Aegis class destroyer, you know that basically the Aegis can engage hundreds and hundreds of targets at once. Your only limiting factor is your missiles. You eventually run out. So your ammunition is your only real limiting factor. This thing can track just about anything, anywhere, or whatever. But it's not 100%. So one missile gets through the umbrella and splashes down 100 meters from the merchant ship. So what do? They turned around. They deemed it was too risky and turned around. They forced a withdrawal. So listen to this. At 1621, the Houthis issued a statement claiming that their earlier attack on U.S.-flagged Maersk vessel near the Red Sea actually hit the U.S. ship. The Houthi military statement further praised the operation as a success, given the Maersk vessel and accompanied warships were forced to withdraw from their path entering the Red Sea. This is their official statement. Several of our ballistic missiles struck their targets despite warships' attempts to intercept them. However, the Houthis hadn't offered any proof, such as photographic evidence, because, of course, they're not anywhere close to it. Now, that's the interesting thing. It really didn't do that. It splashed down 100 meters from the ship. But, dude, for them to turn their tail and run like that,
right?
I get it from the risk standpoint, but that's a loss. That's a loss. You were engaged and you turned tail and ran.
You would think that they would immediately be able to trace back the path of
they could
they
had the capability,
triangulate where it came from, and then
they
just
did
bomb
they
the
had the
crap
capability
right, and then just
what happened
going forward.
It's the same shit that I dealt with when I was in, and we were over in the Persian Gulf, oil for food program. You would go over and you couldn't do anything to defend yourself, basically. Matter of fact, we had to have explicit permission to have a round in the magazine, a round in the chamber. The captain had to authorize us to do that. We're going over to a ship that we have no idea, these pirates and everything, and we can't even have a round in the chamber.
Yeah, those whole rules of engagement things are so
dude, it's
yeah,
absolutely insane.
I mean, it's the same thing that caused the problem with Black Hawk Down, right? The rules of engagement, and it caused this huge cluster in Mogadishu.
But that's my point. That's my point. Is
Right,
that it's not the capability of the ship, it's not the capability of the crew or anything else.
It's the decisions that are being made.
That's right.
Yes.
And we turned tail and we ran. So we're already looking weak. Now, what do we look like in the eyes of these guys? Johnny King.
Are we looking weak on purpose? That's the question that's on my mind.
Well, let me ask you something. In all honesty, what benefit would there be to looking weak? And on purpose, somebody made that decision on purpose. There was a reason. I don't know what that reason was, but to me, it's like we are inviting more of a conflict. And if you take a look, all of these regional players are now much more, let's just say they have a backbone now to do things that they normally wouldn't have done in the past. Go ahead, Johnny.
They're a lot more galvanized.
Well, that's because President Potato Head, and we appear to be weak, bringing in all these illegals and
we're the laughing stock of the world right now.
Destroying the Ukraine and backtracking on a lot of the U.S. policies that we've had before. The world is going absolutely apeshit. We need a strong leader. It don't matter who it is. I'm not going to get political and say Trump or whoever, but it does. We need a strong leader for the world to look to maintain that peace. Peace through strength.
Damn. Well, it's true. Peace through strength. I'm right there with you. You have to be able to. Okay, let's take Israel. It's a great example because here you have rules of engagement trying to be forced on another sovereign nation. And there's a whole lot of people that are up in arms about how Israel's handling things over there. But I will tell you that that is kind of the way you're supposed to do it. And as a matter of fact, like when you go to war, it used to be you had rules of war, but they don't follow the rules of war anymore. So what do you do when the opponent doesn't follow the rules of war? Do you continue to follow the rules of war at your own peril?
You know? This is something I had said, okay, right when this whole Hamas-Israel thing kicked off. I said, Israel needs to go in and handle this as fast as possible, as hard as possible. Just go in, you need to go in just full force. And I said the longer this drags out, the worse it's going to be. And what has happened, you had the international community telling them, hey, don't go in. Then they ended up postponing for a couple weeks, remember? And they weren't going into Gaza. And I'm like, this is bad. They should have immediately, because now all it's doing is it's giving Hamas time to prepare and hunker down and fortify their positions, and it's just going to make this incursion into Gaza a much more bloody conflict than it needs to be. Because if they just went in right away, like a shock and awe kind of situation, and just hit them and started clearing it out right off the bat, it could have been done in maybe a couple of weeks. But now look where we're at.
Yeah, and with 450 miles of tunnel, I mean, you're just right. You'll never clear it all out. That's the problem. You have to go in and you have to say, look, I'm giving you civilians, you get out, you go this way,
And no, it wouldn't have been pretty. It would have been very nasty. It would have been the fighting would have been horrific. It would have been, but you have to go in like that, and you have to do that. You have to do that response immediately. You can't wait around and waffle around.
So now we're at the point where you have the U.S. hedge money's threatened everywhere, and you also have at home the other side that, you know, the free Gaza, the Gaza this, the Gaza that. Okay, I absolutely agree. The Balfour Accord was terrible. What a terrible, terrible deal. The Rothschilds know they exacted a terrible deal on the Palestinians. It was supposed to be. You look at things now. Israel was never supposed to be a nation state again. It did so through a lot of coordinated and pinpoint special interest powers that shouldn't be execution. It's the only way it came about. 1948 it did. But since those Balfour Accords, there has been nothing but animosity and hatred towards the West because of the raw deal that was exacted on them. It predates the nation state of Israel. You know, so this has a long-standing historical anchor on it that's just not going to go away because you blow the snot out of the Gazans. You know? That's not how it works. So what really needs to happen right now, and Johnny alluded to it earlier, is, quite frankly, you got to have a strong leader out there that is going to come in and do a couple things. The geopolitical situation is very important. However, the domestic situation, we're a critical mass in this country. I mean, I just got a $600 gas bill. You know what I mean?
Right.
A $600 gas bill for natural gas. It's all self-inflicted. It doesn't have to be that freaking high. You know why it's that high? Because of the current regime in the White House. Because of the corporate greed on Wall Street. Because retirements are all tied to Wall Street performance, to the performance of market funds, of hedge funds, you name it. Your retirements are all tied to that. The baby boomers right now are probably one of the biggest issues that we have because all of their money is what is fomenting all of this craziness. The medical industry, when they freaking made medicine for profit, when they took the hospitals and they started the HMO thing, Nixon and Kaiser, that brought about the downfall of compassionate care in the United States. That brought about the downfall of and the reversal of life expectancy. I mean, it still went up for a little while, but now look at it. Look at what we have going on now. You can say it's drugs, overdoses. You could say it was COVID. You can give me any excuse in the world, but I can tell you what it really is. It's about for-profit medicine. When medicine went for profit, doctors couldn't spend the time required to figure out the problems. You had big pharma that came in with a freaking drug for every ailment, and it went from fix the problem to treat the symptom. And once it became treat the symptom, the only thing hospitals are good for is to go there to die. And that's exactly what happens today. When you go to a hospital, you go there to die. You don't go there with expectations of leaving. And if you do, you're a fool. Because we do not have compassionate care anymore. We don't have doctor-patient relationships anymore. And we don't have the medicine anymore to do what we have to do. Why? All self-inflicted. All self-inflicted. We don't have the energy anymore. We don't have the money anymore because it's all going out the door to energy. Why? Because some asshat at the White House wants to put in windmills that don't work, or solar panels that aren't as efficient as they claim to be. And oh, by the way, what are we going to do with them when they go bad? Anybody thought of that? It was kind of like nuclear energy. Oh, yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah. Until we started having all this spent fuel. Now what do we do with it? You can only make so many nukes. So, we got a real problem on our hands in a lot of different ways. And you got to have a strong leader that's going to be able to tackle all of these issues. And the answer can't be taking 401ks away to pay the national debt and giving you IOUs in return, which will happen prior to this whole great reset and all this crap. They'll take all the retirement funds. They proved they could do that in Cyprus, and they'll do it again. Right, Johnny King?
Absolutely, Joe. You mentioned you got a $600 gas bill. I got a $300 electric bill. I don't know why. All my lights in the house are LED. I got a new washer, energy efficient, new hot water heater, electric, energy efficient. The elite want us hurting and hurting bad. They're going to crash the economy. Why? Because they want to bring in the new digital economy. The new digital economy is going to enslave us. Look, I've been investing in digital currency in several different currencies, such as Bitcoin and the like, for the last 5 years. I have a debit card that I can buy Bitcoin or any other digital currency and spend it. However, if I go to work and I go to my break room and I decide to slide my debit card down through the AVI vending machine to buy myself a soda, it registers that I bought that soda and how much for. Why? Because that is power and control.
Very much so. Very much so. You're absolutely right. What we're going to see this year, of course, is the pullback of interest rates, which will then bring about inflation again, only it's going to come back harder and faster than it did last time. And that's going to bring about a crisis. It's going to bring about a crisis probably after the election. We probably won't see the actual hockey stick of the interest rates until after the election. Why? Well, because why not take that populist leader that you're going to have in there? And I think they already know that unless they pivot.
And then put them as the face of the crash, right?
That's it. That's it. You hope it doesn't come to that, but that's basically what's going to happen. It's the kind of same thing that happened to Herbert Hoover, right? You could say what you will about Hoover, but all Hoover said was government was not the answer to the issues in Wall Street. That regulation wasn't the answer. And because of that, he lost the presidency. And he was blamed for it. But Hoover had nothing to do with that. It was all the banksters. Just like it would be now. It's all the banksters. It's all the special interest groups. And it's the gutless, spineless people in Congress that have bankrupted us all these years. Now you're going to have people that have no idea what it's like to survive without some sort of government intervention. What happens when that goes away? Right? What happens when EBTs aren't there anymore? Look at
people.
EBT was the answer to bread lines, right? People say bread lines don't happen. Have you seen a food bank line lately? They're through the roof. So not only do you have EBTs, but you also have the mile lines for food banks now, and the homeless and everything else. Things that were hidden through the social safety net are now, not only do you still have the social safety net, but all these problems are back with a vengeance because of what? Because of government intervention. And it's going to make, and it made it 100 times worse than it ever would have been had the government not been involved. It's terrible.
Yeah, and and you have all of these people that are dependent now on these social safety nets, right? And so whenever the rug gets pulled from underneath them, they're not going to know how to react or respond to that because they've never had to deal with an actual crisis, a situation of that magnitude. So a lot of the people in this country aren't prepared, and they
Who
won't know
in
what
the
to do.
hell could be? Let me ask you something. How do you prepare for something like that? Think about it.
Right.
Because remember, Johnny King, when we used to do this stuff all the time, right? We were doing it 5 days a week. And we used to say, in a crisis, when shit hits the fan, you have 3 days until the food runs out. And we thought, and that was a pretty good estimation based on, if things are orderly, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay. But then we saw the breakdown of the EBT system probably 5 years back. And for, I think, 24 or 36 hours, the EBT system didn't work. And everybody thought that the government was collapsing. It was right about the time we were having the government shut down, and there was a lot of crap going on. And I remember it's down in Louisiana. Would you not know that within an hour, 1 hour, the food was gone? That people panicked and they all left with carriages and carriages of food. They stripped that store clean in an hour. And I have been changed ever since because I'm sorry, when that happens, you won't have time. There's no time. There's no 3 days. You don't have 3 days. The food will be gone. It will be gone. And that's the thing that I learned was that there is no 3 days. We don't even know how the hell it's going to play out. That's why it's important that you are as prepared as humanly possible. But again, I don't know how the hell anybody could prepare for something like that. Go ahead, Johnny.
The only way through this is to be self-sufficient. Grow your own garden, learn herbal medicine, and be self-sufficient. Do not rely on the system. That's the only.
Well, here, let me say this though, Johnny. I gotta cut you off for a second. Until the system fails, right? What good is a garden going to be when your neighbor comes after you looking for your food because his kids are hungry? How do you prepare for that? Go ahead.
You prepare in the best way that you think is possible. Plant your own. Live in the city and you have a balcony. Plant vegetables in a pot that you can set out on your balcony. If you have a yard that's small, dig it up. Put a garden in your yard. Learn how to gather.
There you go. Now you just nailed it. That's how you do it.
Learn how to fish. Learn how to hunt. Gather food for yourself for when times get bad. Because I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, times are going to get very bad. We're going to enter into the greatest depression this country has ever seen. 10 times worse than what the Great Depression was. We're $34 trillion in debt.
You could say all you want that it's
flip your mic down, Joe.
What's that?
Flip your mic down. Microphone.
Whoop, thank you.
There we go.
You can say all you want that it's a fiat currency, but it doesn't matter. It's still the currency. And when that currency collapses, Johnny's right. You have to educate yourself because you can't be prepared for what's coming. No one's going to be prepared. These asshats that are digging bunkers in Hawaii and in the Ozarks and everywhere else that think they're going to have their shit together, guess what? They're not prepared for what's coming. And it's going to be bad. And I just
guess
hope
who else isn't prepared?
Who's that?
People aren't prepared for the show to end.
Oh, I know. Well, hey, you know what though? It was great to have Johnny here tonight. It was fantastic, buddy.
Good seeing you. Joe and Johnny are both in a
I know.
mute
I'm
battle
doing.
right now.
We're doing a mute war. Well, all I can say is I am very, very happy that Johnny King was here today. That man, I hope he comes on more often. And holy moly, we just got to work out his sound issues, but it'll be all right. And then, hopefully, within the next couple of weeks, we may have another OG making an appearance. We're going to work like hell to do it. I'm not going to say who it's going to be. However, anybody that's listened to us for a long time might remember who he is.
Yes,
but I won't say who it is. And no, we're not bringing Kev Baker back from the grave. No, we're not having a seance. I can at least let that out there. So no Kev Baker seance. Go ahead,
Rest
Johnny.
in friend Kev Baker. Fight for us on the other side, baby.
Yeah, that's what we need, no doubt. But yeah, we're about out of time. It was great having you guys here. I want to remind you, kgradb.com. That's the mothership. Go there today. Get a membership and help support KGRADB. It is one of those bastions of people doing the very best they can to give you the information that you need to make the best decisions possible for yourselves and your families. And really, that's what it's all about. And with a little bit of true crime mixed in there and a little bit of Sasquatch, I don't think you'll find another place like it. So with that said, I think we're done. And I hope you all have a pleasant week, and we'll see you all next week. Have a good night, everybody.
Audio.